Thank you very much for having me here. In addressing the question whether originalism is a principled theory of constitutional interpretation or a rationalization for conservatism, find three questions embedded in that, what looks like the single question. One of those questions is, what is originalism? The other is, are particular varieties of originalism principled or capable of being applied in principled ways? And the third is whether particular varieties of originalism are or are not rationalizations for conservatism. So with respect to the first of those questions, what is originalism? For a long time, it's been customary to talk about originalism as if it were a unitary theory, and that everybody who says I'm an originalist actually subscribed to the same interpretive theory. In fact, I think the recent outpouring of literature makes clear that there are a multitude of theories claiming to be originalist, a proliferating multitude with a new one every time a law review is published, it often seems, with quite different views about what originalism is along at least four dimensions. So the first of these four dimensions is the object of historical inquiry. Is it the intent of the framers? Is it the original understanding of the framers and ratifiers, or is it the original public meaning as determined by reference to some possibly hypothetical observer existing at the time the Constitution was written? The second dimension along which originalists differ is the dimension involving the role of originally expected applications of constitutional language in fixing either the original intent, the original understanding, or the original public meaning. So a familiar case that would illustrate the distinction is Brown against Board of Education. Nearly everybody agrees that it was not originally expected that Brown against Board of Education would ban segregation in the public schools. But then the question arises, does that original expectation of the way the language would apply fix the original intent, the original understanding, or the original public meaning, any of which may view the meaning of the Equal Protection Clause at a different level of generality from that established by the original expectations of how the language would be applied. And again, I just want to say originalists differ among themselves about the role of originally expected applications in fixing the original intent, meaning, or whatever. The third dimension along which originalists differ is the dimension of the expected determinacy of original understanding, meaning, or expectations in fixing determinate answers to particular constitutional questions. So that's a convoluted way of saying that some originalists seem to believe that if you study the history and approach the history in the right way, the history will yield a determinate question to every determinate answer to every constitutional question. Other originalists say that the original meaning will often be vague and that it will fall to constitutional interpreters to give it concrete meaning. Keith Whittington has talked about a distinction between interpretation, which yields the meaning, and then construction, which makes it determinate. Jack Balkin and Randy Barnett go very far in terms of the flexibility that they think that this distinction gives to judges and justices to construe the Constitution where original meaning falls out, runs out. Other originalists have different views about this. And then the fourth dimension along which disagreement occurs is the dimension involving whether historical evidence of meaning ever yields to other factors, such as prudence, or in particular, precedent or stare decisis. Obviously, this can make a huge difference. Now, when you recognize that there are at least 4 dimensions along which originalist theories differ with one another, and recognize that along each of these dimensions we're not just talking about binary choices, then I don't think it's meaningful to talk about originalism as if it were just one theory. I think what we've got is varieties of originalism. And then you may say, but what separates originalists is that they think that original understanding, original meaning, something historical, at least plays a large role in fixing constitutional meaning. But I don't think you'll find much pushback when the point is stated that generally among non-originalists. So I think we've got as many varieties of originalism today as we've got varieties of non-originalism. And in the rest of this talk, I'm therefore going to talk about varieties of originalism. So then the second question. Can any of these varieties of originalism, are any of these varieties of originalism principled theories? And to answer that question, anybody's got to figure out what it means for a theory to be principled. My own understanding, which I don't expect to be controversial, would be for a theory to be principled, it would need to be sufficiently determinate to yield correct answers to constitutional questions, or at least to many constitutional questions. And then second, it would need to be sufficiently specified in advance so that somebody other than the person applying the theory could tell whether the theory was being applied in a consistent way from case to case. And with this notion of what a principled theory would be in mind, we can imagine an ideal, not one that anybody realizes, it wouldn't be reasonable to expect anybody to realize it, but the ideal of a perfectly or fully specified constitutional theory that would indicate in a determinate way along each of these 4 dimensions what exactly a particular originalist theory was. Now, if we operate with this ideal of a fully specified theory, then I think it's obvious, as I say, that no originalist theory is fully specified. I don't mean to be criticizing originalist theories on that ground. But the conclusion that would come is that the question how far a theory is principled is one of degree. The question is how relatively capable of principled application is a theory. Against that background, I'd just make several really quick points. First, obviously, the more fully specified a theory, the more capable it will be of really principled application in the sense that other people can see if it's being applied in a consistent way case to case. Second, most originalists, many, probably most, don't have very well specified theories. They will say that they are originalists, but without having worked out the details along the 4 dimensions that I identified.